Get a promotion at work. There's a catch. I have to move to this small town in the middle of nowhere. Fuck it. It's a raise and the first promotion of my life. Get kinda lonely though, supervising these rednecks. One guy seems kinda cool though. We hang out on smoke breaks. Everybody avoids him. I can't figure out why. He's funny and fun to hang out with. He's off sick one day and someone comes to me, tells me I have to stop hanging around with him. What the fuck is the problem? They say he killed his best friend and blame someone else for it. Oh please. These rednecks love a good rumor. Decide to ignore it like the 20 other dumbass stories I've heard since moving here. Couple days later, we're on a break. Says, "Hey Anon, I gotta talk to you about something." What's this about then? Says if we're gonna be friends, there is something I should know. Says he doesn't feel emotions like normal people. Studies how people socialize and got good at doing it, but totally does not understand people's feelings. Oh, you're a sociopath. Okay, dude. Tell him not to worry about it. It's cool. I was young and stupid and lonely and buttfuck nowhere. What can I say? Reassured, he starts talking about his friends. Says he used to have 2 close friends. Says he hit one in the back of the head with a rock and pushed him off the cliff. Why? I just wanted to see what it would feel like. Really, matter of fact. Says he blamed his other friend and was more convincing in court, so he only spent 8 months behind bars. He could be telling me about what he had for dinner last night. All of this is in his usual tone. There is no punchline. He starts talking about something from work. My face when. I'm able to independently confirm it later. My face when. I almost invited the guy over to my place. Told him we could not hang out anymore because I was a supervisor and the boss said we had to stay separate from everyone. He gets fired for getting in a fist fight with someone at work. This is a good one. Got anything else about the town and its people? Actually, yeah, come to think of it. At least 50% of the town was chronic. Everybody smoked pot on occasion, without exception, but at least half did so daily. Massive industry out there. This was long before serious talks about legalizing it. No greenhouses in town. Assumed it was grown in surrounding area. Forest around the town went on for miles. Pick any direction, and you have to drive minimum 3 hours to get to a city. People lived out there in the woods, in tiny communities, maybe 2 to 3 houses, probably growing pot to make a living. You'd meet people from these families sometimes. Always dramatically low IQ, always stubborn as mules, always kinda ugly, but not necessarily birth defect. They always acted like they could do what they wanted, because who's gonna find them out in the woods? Cops live in cities. This meant even the townspeople, holy fuck I used that term, were a bit nervous about leaving the city at night without a rifle. Went out to a supposedly haunted cemetery one night, on a lark because insanely bored, so fuck it. No ghosts, but definite noise in the trees. Not an animal. We were being watched. Was more worried that it was someone alive than a ghost, because who the fuck walks through the woods in pitch black of night without a flashlight and watches us? Bug the fuck out and never go back. This one's not super spooky, but it was still unsettling. Live out in the sticks. Hear truck pull up in driveway. Peek through curtain. It's a typical, unmarked, white work pickup. Doorbell rings. Go with my dad to the door. Old redneck guy is standing on porch. Dirty. Smells like cigarettes. Wearing an apron, covered in bloodstains. Nope. I'm selling meat. Would you like to come out and see it? It's in the back of my truck. What kind of meat? All kinds. Sorry, not interested. Goodbye. Also, local girl goes missing. Huge search. Nothing in months. Wake up to a cop at the door. He asks us to search our property and clear our ditch for the missing girl's clothes, phone, and possibly remains. Our entire section of the county is asked to comb our properties. Clear ditch. Nothing. Search yard. Nothing. Property is cut in half by huge power lines on electric company property. Decide to search under the lines. Find pile of wadded up tarps. Definitely were not there before. Patch was recently mowed and visible. Human-shaped lump and tarp. This is it. Oh fuck. Delicately lift tarp. Pile of 2x4s. I seriously thought I was going to discover a corpse, even though there was no smell. Corpse found outside an abandoned house, a few lots down. It's creepy to know that the killer drove past my home with a corpse while I was sleeping, and how long she rotted nearby. I've posted this here once before. Guess it's time again. Be me. 15 years old at the time. Walking around with two friends at like 9:30 at night. Go to this park that is closed to the public at sundown. We sit around and talk about random shit for a while, trying to scare each other, etc. Some shitty old car and a super beat up truck pull into the park insanely fast, right up next to the swings that we were sitting on. We all decide that this is probably a drug deal or some shit, and we should get the fuck out, so we weren't witnesses or whatever. We start walking away from the cars towards another exit to the park. Hey, get the fuck back here. We start running like hell through this 600 foot by 600 foot field leading into a baseball field, and this field had a small road in it. This was a huge ass park, running in full on sprinter mode. We hear what sounded like a small caliber pistol popping off behind us. One of the friends said he heard a bullet was by him. Anyway, we keep on running and running and running, and hear one of the cars peel out to the road alongside the park and pull into the road in the field. Feeling like one of my lungs has popped at this point, but kept sprinting anyway. Car drives down the road, but doesn't go onto the grass in the field. By this time, we were halfway across the baseball field. Run across baseball field, still hearing shouting far behind us. We drop down by this fence on the edge of the park, under a big ass oak tree, and hope for the best. Lay down in silence in the wet grass at about 10 PM for literally 2 fucking hours while they search for us with flashlights around the park. 12 AM when they leave. We crawl to the edge of the fence and walk about a half mile back to his house, play video games, and eventually fall asleep. And that's the story of the time I'm pretty sure I almost got kidnapped or something. My dad had a story from his and my mom's first house. Neighborhood was kinda shady. Dad would often paint before going to bed next to a window. One night painting, and he casually looks out the window. There is a face right there, staring at him. Dad starts to yell. He's like, it's okay, it's okay. Turns out he wanted money. Dad said hell no. Also, after my brother was born, but before I was, they had a crazy neighbor. One night, my brother heard a noise outside and checked it out. Saw someone with a saw cutting down a tree completely on our property. Ran to tell Dad. Dad did not believe him at first, but checked it out. Ran out to see what the hell he was doing. Guy bolts it, runs next door. Dad realizes it's crazy neighbor. Next day he goes over and asks the guy what the hell he was doing. Guy denies he was ever in their lawn with a saw, even though Dad clearly saw him. Would also throw meat over the fence into our backyard where our dog was. Might have been poisoned. My neighbor is batshit insane. Wakes us up with her screaming at like 7 AM. Like, bloody murder screaming. Has called the city hall or whatever the shit it is called about us twice. First complaining about oil spots on our driveway. Second was about our AC being too loud. City actually sent someone to move our AC like 3 feet further. Obviously does not do shit to help. She went ballistic at the guy moving it, yelling at him through her window about how loud it is. It doesn't even bother us, so she either has supersonic hearing or is full of shit. Has actually trimmed her trees to have a better vantage point into our backyard. All of our houses are backed up to a hill, and she stands on her end pretending to water and just watches us through the windows. Have caught her on a few occasions, calling my dog to her fence. Luckily, he hates everyone not in my family, so he does not go to her. We have literally done nothing to her, and don't even retaliate. Oh man, I have a weird crazy neighbor story. I was living in a small apartment complex, and my bro lived in the unit beside mine. On the other side of his apartment lived this fucked up guy. His name was Preston, and he was really skinny and hairy, and he always looked dirty and drunk. One night, my bro started banging on my door like, hey, I need you over here, something is wrong. I go over there, and his floor is flooding through the wall. The water was coming from Preston's apartment. We both walk over to Preston's door and ask him if everything is okay. He's nearly deaf, so he acts like he can't understand us. He was obviously extremely drunk too. We told him that his water leak is ruining my bro's furniture and shit, and he needs to fucking make it stop. All Preston said was, "I'll get to it in the morning, don't worry." We called the landlord, who called the water company, to come turn the water off. The landlord went in and discovered that Preston's toilet was so fucking crammed with shitty toilet paper that his toilet was backing up and flooding everything. Shit everywhere. Huh, don't worry, Preston will get to it in the goddamn morning. Fuck that guy. Not sure what this was about. Still makes no sense to me, but it's definitely strange. Had a shitbox car that I put up for sale for $500. Honestly should have just scrapped it. No one is gonna buy this. Willing to take any offer thrown my way. A couple calls telling me that they are on their way to look at it. I'm home alone with my 1-year-old asleep in a crib. The mother is out. Couple keeps calling, saying they can't find the place. Finally show up in a shitty van. They look like two dirty hippies, very giddy and smiling a lot. I greet them and small talk. They don't even take a second look at the car, almost as if not even interested in it. Keep small talk. Man asked to use the bathroom. Like an idiot, I say sure. Man in bathroom. I'm sitting outside bathroom and hallway, with his wife I guess, just talking. She's going on about a lot of new agey talk, saying I have a really good energy about me. Thinking about my kid asleep in the next room. I get weirded out, and think these fuckers need to leave now. I mention how I have to leave soon, so we should wrap this up and get them outside again. They are very polite and kind, but there's just something off about them. Woman keeps telling me to look at the stars or some shit, telling me this car was meant to happen like destiny, yet they have not shown interest in it. Man pulls out 500, does not even negotiate, and hands me the money. One gets in van, other gets in car. I'm just praying it starts and gets them out of here. They keep smiling at me and waving as they drive off. Definitely a weird experience. Not sure if they were crazy, slow, cultists, or just weird, but I can't help but think that the whole event could have gone much differently. Be me, 18 at the time, about 2 a.m. Walking along beach with ex-GF. Walk down entire boardwalk. 2 cars parked with no one in them. No one is ever parked this far down at this hour. Walk a few blocks away from beach, arguing with GF and hear loud bang. Assume cheap fireworks. Eventually walk back to the same beach, now 4 a.m. Walk past same cars once again, but make nothing of them. Have smoke in front of said cars. Go home. Next morning at convenience store across the street from the beach. Cops everywhere. Murder-suicide in the car I walked past several times. My face when. Stood 3 feet away from 2 dead bodies for about 10 minutes and did not know. I used to live in Tamworth, Australia. Awesome place, but there is a lot of bad shit there as well. Not being racist, but there are a lot of aboriginals that cause a bit of shit, as well as lots of drugs and violence. B8 or 9. House backed onto a massive park, as did neighbors' houses, kind of all surrounded the park. Used to play in the park all the time with no worries in the world. One day, a poor scruffy family moved across the park from us. Had a little crush on one of the sons. He was about 15. One day, the oldest son kicked my dog so hard, my mom almost called the cops. Also drove their car through the park, trying to run me over because they thought it was funny. Used to have parties, and all of the guys would just gather in the park and scream shit. Too scared, and wasn't allowed to play in the park anymore unless my parents were there. A while later, I kind of forgot everything that happened and was digging a hole under my favorite acorn tree because I used to search for treasure. Didn't realize, but the tree was about 20 meters away from their backyard. Dug until I found a big red toolbox with tools inside, all wrapped up in black garbage bag plastic. I thought, score. Gave the toolbox to my dad. Remembered it a couple of months ago. Now it seems a bit sus. Maybe someone just decided to bury the toolbox or something, but it just seems weird to me. I don't really post on here much. I usually just lurk, and I main over boards, but this is some fucked up shit I've never been able to explain away in a satisfying way. Driving home. Drive along a woodsy area by the river. There's a little place that you can pull over to park. There are parking spots, picnic tables. As I'm driving, see somebody standing on the table. Don't think much of it at first, just freaks me out. As I'm pulling off, my brain can't get off the image. Just standing still on the picnic table at like 2 in the morning. Nobody else around. Get the nerve to turn around and check it out one more time. Go in a circle instead of U-turn, so I can be on the same side of the road as the picnic tables. Drive by again slowly. Nothing there. Begin to drive off. Guy is standing in the middle of the road. Nearly had a heart attack. Slam brakes. Something is not right. Back is turned to me. Fully nude. Skin is greyish white. No hair on head. Relatively young looking guy. Thin. His head is tilted back and he is staring straight up. I'm frozen. Don't want to honk. Don't want to move. Don't know what to do. Spreads his arms and lets out a high-pitched screech. Suddenly turns around. Up until this point, I'm thinking this is a drugged-up weirdo, and I'm just worried he might be trying to rob me or something. He turns around, and he has no genitals, no hair, not even eyebrows. He stands, motionless and expressionless, staring right at me. Opens mouth, and lets out another shriek. The last thing I remember is it started getting really bright. Then there's a gap in my memory, and I just remember pulling up to my house like nothing happened, eating, and then going to bed. I have never done any drugs. At that point, I had never consumed alcohol in my life. I was wide awake and perfectly lucid, and I didn't even remember that this had happened until a few days later, when I drove by the area again, and it all came back to me. I grew up in a very quiet neighborhood. There was rarely anything that happened in the area, and the only time I remember the cops being out there, besides this instance, was when one of the kids from a nearby area decided to break into a house that was for sale. Nothing violent ever happened on the block, and there was never any reason for anyone to think anything would. Every year around Halloween, the houses would decorate with some subtle decorations and lights, nothing too creepy. The kids from the neighborhood would walk around and trick-or-treat, and even the social holidays like this were pleasant. My parents were the picture of suburban life. My dad was a financial advisor, always dressing nicely, and my mom stayed home, but she was pretty involved with the local library and ran the local book club. There was a point in my childhood where my dad started changing. He was always a social person, always friendly and talkative, but at some point, he started listening to a certain radio show and then reading some things online. This was 2003, so the internet was a bit more of a Wild West, and he started on this streak of paranoia that became borderline obsessive. It started subtle enough. He had changed the locks on the front door and then added a chain lock, the kind that where you can look out, but not open the door all the way. Our front door did not have a window, so you had to either look out the window that was close by, or open the door to see who was there. Then he added these motion-activated floodlights that would light up the neighborhood like a stadium anytime one of the neighbor cats would cross our yard. My mom would joke that he was preparing for the apocalypse with how much he was securing the house, but I could tell by the look in her face that she was concerned. Our front door had a motion sensor on it. It ended up with 4 locks. All of our windows were all but bolted shut, and he was starting to hoard canned goods in the basement. He was pretty much a bunker away from being a full-on prepper. That year, on the day before Halloween actually, I had come home after a long day of school and then soccer practice to find my dad at the kitchen table, surrounded by tools and a stack of new security cameras. This was the early 2000s, so they weren't the kind that you can get today. They were all fully wired and required to have the central box connecting all the units. When I asked what he was doing, he responded with, "I'm going to put up cameras. This way I'll be able to watch all directions around the house with these bad boys. No one is going to sneak up on us." I wanted to ask him who exactly it was he was expecting to sneak up on us, but by this point, talking to him was almost feeling like a chore. Everything was about security. Everything was about, quote, keeping us safe, which I understand to a point, but at the same time, safe from what? We lived in a suburb where everyone knew everyone else, and while I understand not getting complacent, we weren't really in much danger. My dad spent that entire night putting up the cameras. He did not even make dinner for me. So when my mom got home at 8 from the book club and I had not eaten, she was pretty upset with him. There was definitely some yelling at that point. I think my mom had had enough as well. That night, I was lying in bed, just thinking about life as preteens often do, and I was watching the clouds pass in front of the moon when I heard someone talking. I could hear my dad's voice, angry and demanding, and then I heard what sounded like desperate yells from someone else. I was curious. I was a kid, so I wanted to know what was going on. I crept out of bed and down the hallway into the living room, and what I saw made my blood run cold. I saw my dad standing in the middle of the living room, his face flushed with a mix of fear and rage, his shoulders hunched. I saw my mom standing in the door to the kitchen, one hand pressed to her mouth, and I could tell that she was panicking. Then I saw something confusing. The front door was open, and there was a man that I had never seen standing there in the doorway with his hands up, trying to say something, but it was like he could not speak out of sheer terror. And then I saw why he was terrified. My dad was holding a handgun, trained right on him. Now, I want to say that I completely understand the need for defense and security. I want that to be clear, and I do personally appreciate the Second Amendment, but this situation, it was not it. I want to point out that the front door was open. There were 4 locks on that door, which I now know to mean that my dad had opened it. I don't know if he knew that the guy was out there. I don't know if it was just a random run-in of the 2 men, but the fact that my dad had a gun on him, a gun that neither my mom nor I knew that he even had, and that he had just installed the security cameras that watched every square inch of the yard, makes me think that my dad knew that this man was at our door, and that he had basically created the scenario. I don't know if it was because he wanted it to happen, or if his paranoia had gotten so bad that he felt like he needed to take it head on, but it is what it is. My dad kept screaming at this man not to move, but then also screamed at him to get on his knees, conflicting instructions that I could tell were causing a panic in this man. When I got into the living room from the hallway, I did something that I will always regret, because I feel like it made the situation worse. I asked what was going on. The man looked at me, and I could tell that he was crying. My dad shot a look at me over the shoulder and yelled, "Get back in your room." I just stood there in confused silence, watching the scenario not move for several seconds until the man lowered his arms and started trying to talk. I'm sure he just wanted to explain why he was there, but my dad did not give him the chance. The second the man dropped his arms, my dad pulled the trigger. I stood there and watched my dad squeeze off 5 shots, all of them hitting the man, who stumbled back and then fell to the ground. The silence that followed that moment was so deep and all-consuming that for a second I thought I had gone deaf. My dad's face was frozen, his mouth slightly open, and his gun still aiming at where the man had been standing. My mom broke the silence when she started sobbing and screaming at my dad, asking what he had done. I swear, it was mere seconds before I heard the sound of police sirens and saw the lights in front of our house. The cops ran up with their weapons drawn, yelling at my dad to drop his gun as they tried to figure all of this out. I think that was when my dad realized that he was still holding it, because he actually looked confused and scared when he put it on the ground. They did pull him out of the house to talk to him, and they then talked to my mom and me as they tried to figure out the bloody scene on our front porch. To kind of wrap this up as quickly as I can, the man was a neighbor. He lived on the street behind ours. I had never seen him before, but he apparently lived 1 road over in a house that kind of looked similar to ours. Come to find out, he had actually been drinking at a bar down the way. He'd had way too many, and he had walked home. But at some point, he must have gotten confused and turned down our road and got to our house. Now, I don't know if he tried to open the door or if he had just knocked or something, but I'm guessing that my dad saw him and opened the door to confront him, which was the wrong way to handle the situation. The end of the investigation determined that it was a tragic accident, but that my father was defending himself and his family, so it was considered justified. I don't think that tragic is a strong enough word for what happened, but I don't have the vocabulary to say what it really was. This man was drunk and confused and did nothing more than stumble up to the wrong house. He was not armed, he did not break in, and my dad created the scenario where his life was in more danger than he had. It got worse when I found out that this guy was actually the father to a girl in my class. She was out of school for a while, but when she came back, I could not ever get the nerve to talk to her. What was I supposed to say? Hey, sorry my dad killed yours. It may not sound related, but my family never celebrated Halloween after that. My dad never put out the decorations, and we never carved pumpkins again. I think this took a toll on my dad, and he never wanted anyone to come up to our front porch at night ever again. I will say that my dad was also never the same after that night. He kept up his paranoia, but he became less social, less talkative, and less involved in my life until he eventually died of a massive heart attack at 48. I'm not sure that there's a lesson to this story, Other than to say that security is important, but it's also important to never will a scenario where you shoot a man for protection into existence. There's a certain point where, in his pursuit for security, my father became a hammer, and when you're a hammer, you do everything that you can to find a nail. Couple years ago, walking around woods near my friend's lake house with my dog. Dog starts flipping shit. Let him lead me over a hill. Strong chemical smell. My first thought is meth lab. Campsite, clothes strewn all over. 2 people lying face down on the ground. A long-haired man or a fat woman and a blonde skinny woman. The man's foot is basically on top of a smoking burned out fire. The woman is half out of the tent. Dog is barking like crazy and I'm yelling at them, but neither moves. I'm still about 60 yards away, afraid to get closer. Really fucking weird vibes at this point. Dog is snarling like a goddamn monster, hard to control. No phone signal out there, so I got to go back to the house, yanking the dog the whole way. Tell friend about it. He is pissed about random rednecks camping. He does not take me serious when I say they look fucking dead or drugged. He does not call the cops, and we walk back up there. Friend is acting really weird, really mad and out of character. Dog knows the fucking way and is dying to get back there. We find the spot where the campsite was. I am 100% certain, but there wasn't a scrap of anything there. Somebody broke down that tent, picked up all those clothes, put out, buried and raked out the fire, and went fucking somewhere. All in the 10 to 15 minutes I was heading back, not starting until I was out of earshot. Friend believes me they were there, but just figured I scared them off. Dog is whining, acting manic. We go back. I have no idea what the fuck happened. Either those 2 were out cold, or they were playing dead. If they were drugged out, they could not have broke that campsite down that quick. Not a shitpost. This story isn't me, but my dad. I was a shit little kid. Be my dad. Wake up. Middle of the night. Gotta piss, .gif. Gets up. Walks to the bathroom. Turns lights on. Proceeds to take piss. Turns to the window, which was next to the toilet. It led to the side of the roof of the patio. Very malnourished, pale white face staring through the window. Literally, face pressed up against the glass. He said he remembers his eyes were dilated and bloodshot. Basically, the GIGA tweaker. Panic. Run to the bedroom. Grabs his shitty Jimenez JA9. Stepmom wakes up. Starts freaking out, asking what's wrong. Dad says nothing. Racks round and runs to the bathroom. GIGA tweaker is now stumbling towards the edge of the roof. Dad opens window and goes to shoot. Tweaker falls off edge of roof. Dad runs into my room. Bursts through the door cause my room was right across from the bathroom. Door slam. Light on. Dog barking. Leans over my bed to look for Tweaker. Tweaker is running down street. Goes back to bedroom. Unloads JA9. What happened? Are you okay? Dad explains to stepmom. Isn't on alright? I slept through the entire ordeal and didn't so much as roll over in my sleep. And that's why, if somebody ever breaks into my apartment, I probably had a good run.